Hello, and welcome to English Story Trail. Today, we are going to listen to a famous story. It is a story about an old castle, a mysterious count, and a very strange creature. The story is called Dracula. Dracula was written by the Irish writer Bram Stoker and was published in 1897. It is one of the most famous horror stories in the world. Our story begins in the mountains of Transylvania, in Eastern Europe. And this is where a young English lawyer called Jonathan Harker begins a journey that he will never forget. Jonathan Harker. Mr. Harker travels to Transylvania. Jonathan Harker was a young English lawyer. One day, his boss gave him an important job. He had to travel to Transylvania to meet a rich man called Count Dracula. Count Dracula wanted to buy a house in England. Jonathan had to help him with the papers for the house. So Jonathan packed his bags and began his journey. He traveled by train across Europe. The journey became more and more interesting as he traveled east. Finally, Jonathan arrived at a small village. The people in the village looked worried when he told them where he was going. "Castle Dracula?" one woman asked. "Yes," Jonathan replied. The woman looked afraid. She made the sign of the cross. Then she gave Jonathan a small wooden cross to wear around his neck. "Please take this," she said. Jonathan did not understand. He was not a superstitious man. He thought the people were simply afraid of old stories. Later that night, a black carriage arrived. It was waiting to take Jonathan to the castle. The driver was a strange man. He wore a long black coat. He said nothing. The carriage traveled through the dark mountains. The road became smaller and darker. There were no houses. There were no people. Only the sound of the horses and the wind. After some time, Jonathan saw a large castle on a mountain. It was Count Dracula's home. Count Dracula. The carriage stopped at the castle. Jonathan knocked on the large wooden door. After a few moments, the door opened. A tall, thin man stood there. He had a pale face, long fingers and sharp teeth. He smiled. "Welcome to my home," he said. "I am Count Dracula." Jonathan entered the castle. It was very large, but it was also very quiet. There were no servants. Dracula told Jonathan that he could have a room and anything he needed. Jonathan soon noticed something strange. Dracula never ate with him. He also never seemed to sleep. One night, Jonathan was looking out of a window. The window was very high above the ground. Suddenly, he saw Count Dracula climbing down the outside wall. Jonathan could hardly believe his eyes. Dracula was moving like a spider. He went down the wall with his head first. Jonathan was terrified. What kind of man is he? He thought. Jonathan began to understand that something was very wrong. The castle. Jonathan wanted to leave the castle. But he could not. The doors were locked. There was no way out. He also began to see strange things. One night, 3 beautiful women came into his room. They had pale faces and red lips. They moved towards him. Jonathan was too frightened to move. Then Count Dracula appeared. He was angry. "Leave him," he shouted. The 3 women disappeared. Jonathan now knew that Dracula was not a normal man. he was something much more dangerous. Jonathan found a way to escape from the castle. He traveled away from Transylvania and eventually returned to England. But his terrible experience was not finished. In fact, it was only beginning. Mina and Lucy. In England, Jonathan's fiancée, Mina Murray, was waiting for him. Mina was a kind and intelligent young woman. She was very worried because Jonathan had been away for a long time. Mina also had a good friend called Lucy Westenra. Lucy was beautiful and friendly. She received 3 marriage proposals from 3 different men. One of them was a young doctor called John Seward. Another was a rich American called Quincy Morris. The third man was Arthur Homewood, whom Lucy loved. Lucy chose Arthur. But soon, strange things began to happen. Lucy started walking in her sleep. One night, Mina found Lucy outside near an old church. Lucy was sitting on a bench. There was a dark figure standing behind her. Mina ran towards her friend. The figure disappeared. Lucy was very weak. There were 2 small marks on her neck. Nobody knew what had happened. The strange ship. At about the same time, a mysterious ship arrived in England. The ship was called the Demeter. It had traveled from Eastern Europe. But something was very wrong. There were no sailors on the ship. Only the captain was found dead. His body was tied to the ship. The ship had carried a large number of boxes. These boxes contained earth from Transylvania. And one of those boxes belonged to Count Dracula. Dracula had arrived in England. He was now looking for a new home. And he had found one. Lucy becomes ill. Lucy became more and more ill. Dr. Seward tried to understand what was wrong. He called another doctor for help. His name was Professor Abraham Van Helsing. Van Helsing was a clever man. He had studied many strange illnesses and old stories. When he saw Lucy, he immediately knew that something was unusual. Lucy needed blood. So several men gave blood to save her life. But Lucy became weaker. Van Helsing placed garlic flowers around her room. He also put garlic near her window. Lucy did not understand why. But Van Helsing knew something terrible was coming. One night, Lucy's mother removed the garlic. She did not know how important it was. Then a large wolf appeared outside the house. There was a terrible noise. Lucy was found lying in her bed. She was very pale. And she had 2 small marks on her neck. Lucy died soon afterwards. Her family was heartbroken. But Van Helsing knew that Lucy was not really at peace. Lucy returns. After Lucy's death, strange reports began to appear in newspapers. Children were disappearing at night. Later, they returned. They said that a beautiful woman had spoken to them. The children called her the Bloofer Lady. Van Helsing understood the truth. Lucy had become a vampire. She was now walking through the streets at night. Van Helsing told the others what he believed. They were shocked. But eventually, they followed him. They found Lucy's grave. At night, Lucy appeared. She was no longer the kind young woman they had known. She was a vampire. Van Helsing knew what had to be done. They destroyed the vampire Lucy. It was a terrible moment. But now Lucy could finally rest. Jonathan returns. Jonathan Harker returned to England. He was weak and frightened after his experience in Transylvania. He told Mina everything about Count Dracula. At first, Mina found it difficult to believe. But Jonathan had written everything in his diary. Mina read his diary. She realized that Jonathan had told the truth. Then she saw a picture of Count Dracula. She recognized him. He was the same man Jonathan had described. The group now understood their enemy. Count Dracula was living in England. They had to find him before he attacked more people. The fight against Dracula. Van Helsing, Jonathan, Mina, John Seward, Arthur and Quincy Morris joined together. They searched for Dracula's boxes of earth. They found some of them in Dracula's new house. The group placed holy objects inside the boxes. This meant Dracula could no longer use them safely. Dracula was angry. He wanted revenge. One night, he entered Mina's bedroom. Jonathan was there, but he was asleep. Dracula attacked Mina. He forced her to drink his blood. Mina was now connected to Dracula. She was afraid. The group knew they had to destroy Dracula quickly. They followed him back towards Transylvania. Dracula had taken one of his boxes with him. He wanted to return to his castle. The group traveled after him. They crossed mountains and rivers. The journey was long and dangerous. Finally, they found Dracula's carriage. The sun was beginning to go down. They stopped the carriage. Dracula was inside the box. The end of Dracula. The group opened the box. Dracula was there. His face was pale. His eyes were full of anger. Jonathan and Quincy attacked him. Dracula tried to escape, but they were too quick. Jonathan cut Dracula's throat. Quincy struck him with a knife. Dracula fell to the ground. For a moment, his face looked peaceful. Then his body disappeared. Dracula was dead. Mina was finally free from him. But Quincy Morris had been badly injured during the fight. He died soon afterwards. The group returned home. They were sad about Quincy. But they knew that their terrible enemy was gone. Years later, years passed. Jonathan and Mina married. They had a son. They gave him the name Quincy, to remember their brave friend. The terrible events of the past became a memory. But Jonathan and Mina never forgot Count Dracula. They knew that they had faced something that most people would never believe. A creature who had lived for hundreds of years. A creature who drank human blood. A creature who could turn into a bat and control wolves. Count Dracula had wanted to live forever. But in the end, he was destroyed. And the people who fought him survived. The end. And that is the story of Dracula. It is a story about fear, friendship, courage and the battle between good and evil. Bram Stoker's novel became one of the most famous vampire stories ever written. Since the book was published in 1897, there have been many films, television programs and other stories about Dracula. The character of Count Dracula has become famous all over the world. But the original story is much more than a story about a vampire. It is also a story about people who are frightened but continue to fight. Jonathan Harker is frightened. Mina is frightened. Van Helsing is frightened. But they do not give up. Together, they face Dracula. And together, they defeat him. I hope you enjoyed listening and reading this great story. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this story helpful and entertaining.